Okay, chapter 12. I believe we only have one chapter 12 group, and that's right over here. Okay. What can Gene not do after Finny dies, and how does he explain this? Go ahead, Sydney.
Gene, he can't cry because he feels like...
Tell you what, hold on, Sydney. It's a very clear quotation.
Yeah.
It's right at the end of the chapter, so why don't you find it and read it and give me a page reference. What page is it on?
Page 194.
194. Go ahead and read.
He said, I did not cry then or even about Finny. I did not cry even when I stood watching him being lowered into his family's straight-laced burial ground outside of Boston. I cannot escape a feeling that this was my own funeral, and you do not cry in that case.
Okay. Any one of the three of you. Question 2. How has Knowles confused or merged Gene and Finny's identity before this? Consider how Knowles has shown these boys taking over each other's identities. Where have we seen this before?
When Finny trains Gene to begin his course.
Excellent, Tim. With the Olympic training, Finny is giving his position to Gene. Gene's taking him over, and Gene actually adapts physically and becomes a much better athlete and is really amazed. Where else?
When Gene helps Finny with the Latin translation.
Oh, explain that, the Latin translation. Explain how that's an example.
Because like he's trying to help him or help Finny with schoolwork,
Mm-hmm.
and schoolwork was always Gene's like forte.
That's true. However, Gene, or it would only be a good example if Finny was suddenly excellent at Latin. But he never becomes excellent at Latin. Whereas with the Olympics example, Gene does become excellent athletically. So that works. Any other examples? Just those two? Yeah, Melissa?
There was when Finny got hurt, he put on Finny's clothes.
Yeah.
And now Finny
I'm glad that you say that was kind of weird, because some of you should have read that and said, that's strange. He's putting on his clothes and he looks in the mirror and he says that he looks like Finny. And what else happens shortly after that merges their identities? What is Gene doing at the beginning of the winter session? Why does he get into a fight? What does Quackenbush call him? Anybody remember? It's one of the instances of profanity in the book. And those usually stick in our minds. You got it, Jordan? Yeah, but what was the word right before that? Yeah. Maimed. Very close, Navina. Good. What does maimed mean?
kind of like injured or torn apart.
Injured, disfigured in some way. Gene's not injured. Quackenbush calls him injured. Who's injured? Finny. Quackenbush calls Gene injured. Gene feels like he's injured. He's taking the position, assistant crew manager, of somebody who is injured or crippled. Quackenbush calls him a maimed son of a bitch, and it's that maimed part that really hits. And there's a confusion of identities there. He feels like Finny, and he punches Quackenbush. Yeah?
I think there's also a quote where it says, I think at first I punched him for Finny, but then I realized I did it for myself.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. That's excellent. Do you understand Gene's behavior at the funeral? Does this make sense? What's going on here?
It kind of does, but it's also really weird that like he is trying to take over his friend. Like it makes sense that like you don't cry because some people don't. But like for him to be like, this is my funeral, that's just weird. Like, I don't know.
So it makes sense not to cry, but not for that reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Sydney.
Gene realizes that Finny said like Gene was like an extension of Finny, so that's why he feels like it's also his funeral.
Good. Does that make sense to you, Sydney?
No.
To see somebody as a total extension of you?
No.
Do you have a friend or a sibling who's so close that you don't really see much distinction between you and them?
No.
Neither have I. I've never felt this close to anybody where I see them as anything but separate, so it's kind of strange to me. Abby?
It's like, well, like since they're technically like one person,
Mm.
I mean, did you like, you wouldn't cry at your own funeral, like, you're not like anyone's gonna have that kind of experience, but like, I feel like you wouldn't cry at your own funeral, even if you did.
No,
You could attend your own funeral, I don't think you'd cry.
I would cry depending upon how cool the funeral was. If it was an awful funeral, I'd be crying, but that would totally be the source of it. Nakia?
Isn't Finny and Virginia's relationship kind of like May and April's relationship was in The Secret Life of Bees?
Very nice. I like the connection, Nakia. Thank you. May and April in Secret Life of Bees. They're twins. They're kind of the same person. We don't see them as different, and they kind of merge identities too. The same thing happens to both of them. They experience the same thing. So we shouldn't really see them as separate. Okay, we could have a lot of discussion on this, but hands down for a moment because we have the Chapter 13 discussion. I think you see where we're going. Ultimately, with number 3, we could say, we understand it logically. He sees himself as Finny, but that's strange. It's strange in a literal sense. We've got to see whether or not it's strange in a literary sense. And that's an exploration that we will have in a little bit. Not today.